Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm excited to be here today with Lewis Schultz from TUMI. We're really excited to feature him. He is winning a green apple at this year's Silver Apples Awards. So really excited to have a rising star amongst our midst. So Lewis, welcome. Can you just give us a little background about you and your role?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Lewis Schultz. I'm the media manager at TUMI, currently overseeing all paid advertising, affiliate marketing, and search engine optimization at TUMI. Really focusing on obviously trying to drive as much demand and growth as I can for the brand. Previous to this, I've had an agency background, working, for clients from LVMH to Chanel and even Samsung for their mobile phone line of business. So this is my first time in a role that is brand side, and it's definitely like a big kind of like learning curve, but I'm really happy with where I am and the growth that I've garnered in the past 3 years at Toomey.
Amazing, amazing. So what's it like to be brand side?
It's definitely different because like when you're in an agency setting, obviously like everybody you're so used to everybody kind of like speaking your same language that like when you're in a brand side role, it's more like translating, I guess, to like a lot of like, large like senior stakeholders and stuff like that. So I find that to be kind of like the biggest challenge that I you know, didn't really think much about because I guess I was just so conditioned to speaking about like, media and like our kind of KPIs. But yeah.
Now you get to be the expert.
Yeah, that's if anything, that's like the scary part is kind of like feeling like I have like almost like too much power.
I love it. I love it. Nothing to be scared about there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple moves that you've made and in some different positions you've had. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of some of the key moments throughout your career so far?
I first started my career at Havas, working on the LVMH business, and that was really where I got my kind of like media planning fundamentals, I guess. They were just by nature, by a lot of the brands, they were very kind of like direct IO with like publisher partners, such as like Condé Nast, New York Times, and all of that. And then, my kind of like big shift from like while in Havas was picking up the Moet Hennessy side of the business, which is very kind of like, obviously more sales oriented because at the end of the day they're trying to sell as many cases as they can. And so that was like, I don't know, I thought like the greatest, you know, learning experience I think for me was going about like, understanding, okay, like how does awareness media operate, and then how does kind of like more performance and retail media work. um, but then from there I went to work on the Chanel business at Mindshare, which is very like awareness focused. Like they do obviously have like standard conversion channels like paid search and stuff like that, but they're very much about like driving brand image and protecting their authority in the fashion and luxury handbag space. The one thing I really kind of like loved from working on that piece of business was not only like getting to, work on, delivering like an excellent kind of like product as far as like media strategy and, tactical executions, but also like they were really forward thinking when it came to anything with like audio and really kind of like emerging channels. Whereas like in my past on like Vuitton, like they would not like they were like maybe probably like the last brand to like enter into like a TikTok or something like that because the you know they were just very kind of like guarded. So I did really appreciate how receptive those clients were to kind of like us being like kind of forward thinkers and really pushing them to kind of like react to evolving media consumption habits. And then, really after working on that business for like 3.5 years, I kind of wanted to try something outside of like luxury because that's all I had ever really known. Um, and so I got the opportunity to work on, the Samsung mobile phone business, which was honestly just like, it was a really great learning experience because that is like a brand that has like all the money in the world, and they can do a lot of really cool stuff. So like I was like really honored to get to kind of like help lead their metaverse strategy. And they ultimately, I left after, this had happened, but we got to do like we were planning on like a concert in the metaverse with Dua Lipa. So, they got to
Wow.
do really splashy and like fun things. We did a whole like Super Bowl kind of like activation because they wanted to be known as doing more than just running like a 30-second spot, like, during the game. And they really wanted to have kind of like that wall of sound around like the social, uh I guess like contingent of the game, and as well as like, just really cool custom like influencer activations. But ultimately, I didn't really think that it was the right environment for me, and I kind of missed like, being in more of like a retail like luxury kind of environment. And that's when this TUMI opportunity came about. And I really just kind of like jumped at it because it was also like a big shift for me to go brand side. And I still felt like I could be like learning a lot more about what's really kind of like driving the business outside of just media. Like thinking about like earned and owned channels.
Mhm. I love
Yeah.
that. And I imagine even though you have, a lot of depth going into the position of me, it's nice to see what happens on the client side in the background, and how to kind of navigate that environment is a good learning experience overall.
Yeah, no, totally.
Nice. So you mentioned the Dua Lipa activation that you had with the Super Bowl. That sounds really cool. I know you did one with Toomey at Vegas Grand Prix, correct?
Oh, yes. So that's probably been a big career highlight for me. So last year at the Las Vegas Grand Prix, we did like an in-store activation with our brand ambassador Lando Norris. And it was like really like kind of like one of those opportunities where, we're such a lean team. And so my boss was kind of like, hey, like, we need support here. And so, like, I really kind of like jumped in and, you know, tried to like wrangle all the teams together, I guess, with
Mhm.
pulling this together from like a visual merchandising perspective, like in store, event activation, partnering with my counterpart on like PR and social to really make sure that like we're doing like a coordinated launch for announcing that he was going to be there. Because essentially what we did was like an in-store meet and greet. We announced it like maybe 4 hours before the event actually happened. We partnered
Um,
super closely with the Forum Shops Mall team, and made sure that we had like queues for everybody to be waiting. And it was like funny because I had the fortune of like being there and getting to kind of like help with the event. But like we were like in the store, and like we were like so nervous, like what if nobody comes or whatever. And then literally like within 15 or 20 minutes, there were people like actually already like lined up. And so we were
oh,
like, okay,
wow.
like this is gonna be maybe something. And we ended up having like over 200 people like show up to do um to meet Lando, to sign an autograph and stuff like that. And so I had never done anything like that, and it was definitely very exciting. I think my only takeaway, though, was the kind of like job I took on for this event. Because again, like we were a very lean team. Was I was like the one who like if you're like in line, you would give me your phone, and I would take the picture of you with Lando. And it was like halfway through that like it occurred to me how dirty this job was, because Lando like asked to stop so that his bodyguard could give him hand sanitizer. And that's when I was
As
like,
you're touching
okay,
everyone's
right,
phones.
like, yeah,
Little did you know you turned into the photographer at the event.
yeah, no, literally.
Okay, so what drives your passion for marketing, and really more than that, what's kind of keeping you motivated to stay up to speed and ahead of this fast-paced, ever-changing landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the motivation, is like you don't want to get left behind. Like Like it's like the story about the frog and the boiling water, like you need to get out, I feel like. And so I feel like that's kind of what drives me is just knowing that this industry is so dynamic, and that's kind of what I find so interesting about it is like there's always kind of like something new to like pick up and learn. Like that's what I loved so much about getting to do that, metaverse strategy at Samsung. And we find little ways to, be like strategically different, I guess. Here at TUMI, we're perceived as kind of like an older brand, so there's a lot that we're trying to do to kind of like reinvigorate ourselves. And next year's our 50th anniversary, and so we're trying to do a lot of like I don't want to like spill it like all the gossip for next year, but like we're trying to be like really splashy and disruptive, I think, for next year. And, thinking about like ways to, lean into different like marketing channels to really just kind of like stand out and like, kind of like celebrate, how far we've come as a brand and, how we're kind of like right by your side through every journey, whether it be, your daily commute or, an international travel trip, on your honeymoon or just, for your own personal pleasure.
We talked a lot about more traditional media and performance media, but I know today a lot of the focus is shifting towards deeper, more meaningful consumer engagement. Can you talk a little bit about tactics you used or how you kind of push that through with the brands you work with?
Yeah. So, I think one area where we're trying to do that right now with Tumi is, with our influencer engagement. So this is an area that, our PR and social team, obviously, they have that connection with like influencers and they're trying to build community and engagement. But where we're trying to, I guess, like be nimble and amplify that is like by leveraging creator assets and, pushing that out onto, emerging platforms like TikTok and, even Instagram Reels, where we can really just kind of like, try to, build that community engagement further, I think, by, tapping into somebody who might not be as like big as like a Lando Norris or anything like that, but people who are quote unquote, I guess, like micro influencers and who, have almost kind of like a trusted authority in like the social space.
Mhm. I love that. And now looking down the line and into the future, are there any new tactics or trends that you see that you guys are following or watching closely?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously like everybody's like talking about AI. And so like, that's something we are definitely watching, I think, as a hawk, but it's like, at the end of the day, like you don't want to just like use AI tools just to use AI tools. Like they need to be like meaningful to your brand. So like, right
Mhm.
now we're, obviously leveraging it like, when it comes to like simple things like targeting through like our digital channels and stuff like that. And, a lot of the big platforms like Meta, Amazon, Google obviously have kind of like proprietary AI tools and solutions that we, certainly tap into, but also like anything like tied to content. And that's where things I feel like get like a little bit sensitive because obviously you want to be like, thoughtful about, making sure that you're not taking anybody's IP, but how can you use AI to kind of like help support, copy that's, conducive for like SEO or anything like that so that, you're basically alleviating like all of the time that you're kind of like asking of like your own copywriters and stuff like that so that they can be like a little bit more productive in other areas of the business. Um, but yeah, I don't know. So I think to answer your question, like I feel like AI is definitely the one thing that, we're the most curious about because if anything, it feels like it's going to be something that's kind of like an enhancement to our day-to-day media practices and marketing, initiatives. But um, as far as like any other emerging channels, like I'm not sure. I don't know, maybe like audio is probably something I still feel like, kind of like deeply connected to just because it's kind of like a personal, like, experience. And, obviously like hearing a host read of like your trusted, like go-to podcaster is obviously going to be, something that goes a long way, I think, with any consumer.
For sure. So this year at the Silver Apples, we're going to be honoring a couple students, and we're really excited about that opportunity. And a big component of the Marketing Club of New York is really giving back to the student community, really helping merge that and simplify that process of getting your first job and getting more ingrained into the industry. So backing up a little bit, what got you into the business in the first place?
So I feel like I was like just talking about this with a friend too, because it feels like advertising and marketing is not necessarily something you intentionally go into. It seems like something you kind of fall into. Um, and personally for me, like I really kind of came into this space because like I was actually originally majoring in architecture in college, and I thought that that was going to be my kind of like, rest of life career, but I, had a change midway through and I wanted to pursue PR. And it wasn't until I like actually had a PR internship at Lacoste in the city, and I was kind of like, I don't know about this. But I got exposure at least to the ecom team and like the advertising team. And I was kind of like, oh, like what they're doing seems more interesting to me. And so that's how I kind of like started then kind of, catering my resume a little bit more towards like some of the ad agencies and, got my foot in the door really with Havas. And for me, that was kind of like, the rest is like history. But for anybody who wants to go into it, like try everything, like make sure you have exposure to every kind of like marketing channel because you never know what you could be more interested in. Like personally, I know like I like affiliate marketing. I know I oversee it, but I'm not crazy about it. Like I just like when I get on those calls, it's like, okay, like we just need to get through this and, make sure everything's crossed off and we're good there. But there are other areas like paid social and stuff like that that I'm very curious about because there's just so much kind of like, uh evolution really to that channel that it's dynamic and it's interesting to me. And so like you never know like where your interests are going to fall, and so obviously kind of like try to double down in them and be open to like everything because I did not think I was going to go into advertising. I thought I was going to be an architect, and then I thought I was going to be like a PR director or something, but here I am.
Yeah, that's great advice. And that's what's funny about that is I had a similar path where I also had a PR internship and thought the same thing, made the same switch. So it's perfect. But that's great advice too. And I think really important for anyone entering the business today because there's so many sides and components to marketing. Even if you're, there's the media side and then there's the more brand side versus, programmatic and tech and analytics side. So there's so many layers and so many different ways to get into the business. And I think your point about curiosity is really important because it'll drive, I think, frankly, a more successful career if it's something you're passionate about and curious about and constantly wanting to kind of dig in and learn more.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Lewis, this has been really great. We're so excited for you. We're really happy to celebrate you in a couple weeks on November 7th at our 40th Silver Apples Gala. So thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah, thank you.